I think it's entirely unsupported by the text and the history of the 14th Amendment. This provision was written after the Civil War of an actual rebellion. Trump has not been charged even with incitement.
Harvard's law professor emeritus and constitutional scholar Larry Tribe and his pals at CNN must be fans of the Angle, because they were watching the other night when guest Jonathan Turley took issue with Tribe's position that the 14th Amendment provides a way to keep Trump off the ballot.
Mr. Turley doesn't know what he's talking about. The fact that there was no charge of incitement, no conviction, that's not the point. If you engage in an attempt to overturn the government, you shouldn't be entrusted with power again. It is conservatives like Judge Ludig and members of the Federalist Society who agree with me. I'm afraid that Jonathan Turley is basically a hack.
A hack? I think old Larry needs to look in the mirror. Personally, I think being called a hack by a so-called legal expert who once accused Bill Barr of shooting protesters with rubber bullets in Lafayette Park and who supports court packing, being called a hack by him is a huge compliment. Jonathan Turley, George Washington University law professor, Fox News contributor, joins us now. Professor Turley, your response.
Well, you know, I suppose I'm supposed to now engage in trash talking because that's how this goes, right? This is the license of the age of rage, and rage is addictive, and Professor Tribe shows that addiction. You know, there was a time when law professors could simply disagree and really argue the merits. Tribe has a signature for attacking people. I got off light. He uses vulgarity against, conservatives that don't share his opinions. And frankly, I just think that that is a tragedy for our profession. But on the merits here, what he is suggesting is not just wrong, it's dangerously wrong. You know, as I say in a column in the New York Post in response to that attack, Tribe has often been wrong on these cases. Courts rejected him over and over again. I mean, the California Supreme Court rejected one of the bills that he said was constitutional unanimously. That was the California Supreme Court. Now, does that mean that his views aren't worthy? No. Of course, they're worthy of consideration. But we don't have to do ad hominem attacks. My problem with the 14th Amendment is what Tribe and others are suggesting is that this is self-executing. You don't need a vote of Congress. So 50 states could have litigation against Biden, against Trump. Some could bar him here and some could bar them there. And we would have utter madness. The fact is that this amendment refers to insurrection and rebellion, or rebellion. It comes back to what January 6th really was. Was it an insurrection? Now, my point about his not being charged with it is only because we don't have a vote of Congress. And without that vote, you would think that there would at least be some objective basis.
Yeah, who gets to determine it?
Yes, this was clearly insurrection. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point here. That's why. Yeah, that's why it's hackery to complain that it's hackery. I mean, your whole point, I think, was that who determines when it's an insurrection? Unless you're charged with it, unless there's some finding of fact by a body that's objectively examined the issue, it's just one person's supposition or a panel on CNN or one judge somewhere. So I don't find any of this persuasive.
I don't either. Look, I've given credit to people on the other side who have written really thoughtful pieces on why they believe this is true. I don't agree with it. There is a previous opinion by Chase saying that Congress does have to vote. But I can't get beyond the language of the amendment, that this is a rebellion and insurrection. The obvious point of reference was why the amendment was written, which was the Civil War, which was a real rebellion. Now, what they're suggesting is it could be much broader than that, but they give no limiting principle. Yeah. And that's what makes it so dangerous.
Yeah, they never do. By the way, moving this forward, Jonathan, one of Trump's lawyers is now suggesting that the attempt to have him removed from the ballots in 2024 is potentially tainting a jury pool. Is that an argument?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? We got cut out for a second.
Yeah, just basically they're saying that the attempt to take him off the ballot, that argument and advancing that is itself potentially tainting the jury pool. Is that persuasive or a reach?
Well, to some degree, this is all inevitable, right? The problem with holding all these trials, daisy-chaining them before the general election, is that they're all going to be part of the campaign. And that's going to make jury selection a bloody nightmare. And I still don't understand why the federal court recently decided to drop her trial right before Super Tuesday. At some point, I think mature minds have got to prevail here and to ask how you can make a defendant run from court to court while the presidential election is going on. And all of this is going to impact juries, which is why much of this should really go after the election.
Bingo. Jonathan, my favorite hack out there. Jonathan, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.